I've had my beans soaking overnight. I'm ready to can some beans. But why would you want to can beans? Why don't you just buy them in the grocery store? And that's a fantastic question. When they're on special, I can buy these beans for $1.25. I can get black beans, I can get chickpeas, or I can get mixed beans. I can get whatever kind of beans I want. They're very high in fiber, and they're loaded with nutrients that, especially protein, that can help as a meat extender, so they can make our meals go a little further and save money in this economy. At $1.25, you mix that with a pound of ground beef, you now have 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds worth of protein. So what's wrong with buying these or these or that other one? Have you opened a can and seen some of these are lined with a white layer, or some of them are metal inside? Over the years, our canning products have shifted, where these cans years ago used to be sealed and they would use lead to solder the can shut. Well, that would lead to lead poisoning. And then more recently, BPA plastics have been found to be a problem. Were our food cans lined with BPA? I don't know. And I at this point, I don't care anymore. I am doing this with glass because glass is inert. Nothing leaches out of glass. Glass is glass, period. So if they're still lining our tin cans with something, what are they using now? And are we going to find out in 5 or 10 years that that was also toxic to the human body? I'm going to glass. And another thing, when you buy cans, they're only one size. Unless you're going to a restaurant outlet where you can get a huge jar or a huge can, but still, it's a tin can and it could possibly have toxins lining the inside of that can that we don't know about. Very often, if we're using black beans, we only need half a can of black beans, and that's 398 mils. By using a smaller jar, I'm only getting 250 mils. That's appropriate for my husband and I to have in a meal. There's only 2 of us in the house. Most recipes you'll find are for a 500 mil, and that's still more than we need in our family, but I don't mind eating them cold either, so I'll come up with a recipe to use them, or sometimes we'll just use more beans. But that's okay, that's still 500 mil, and it's going to have liquid in it, it's not all beans. But you could also do a quart if you want it, if you're feeding a larger family and you want to feed, create a whole quart. And it's not uncommon for me, if I'm making a pot of chili, it's not uncommon to open 2 or 3 cans. So for some families, a quart of beans is the way to go. In our house, I like to use the mixed beans in my chili. And I like to use black beans in my Mexican meals. My tacos or my burrito bowls, I'll just open a can of black beans and I'll do a black bean and corn quite often. Some of you might argue, but the inside of your canning lid has that white liner on it. What if that's attached to your jar? But you know what? Your liquid only comes up to the collar. It's a 1/2 inch to 1 inch away from that plastic liner. I feel a lot safer with this. I really feel a lot safer with this. So if this was $1.25 on special, it would be $1.99, $2.49 here in Ontario when it's not on special. This might be $3.99. 2 pounds of beans for $4. This was $1.99, so I'd be able to buy 2 cans. But you know what? This big bowl that's been soaking overnight, that was a 2-pound bag of beans. That's a heck of a lot more than what you get in that can, or 2 of those cans for the same price, and fewer toxins. I like to grow my own beans as well. I use a company called Terra Edibles, and this is for black beans. This is black turtle beans. I might have paid $4 for that, which is the same as this, but it's going to give me more beans than this. That whole package of seeds will give me more than this. But you know what else? You can take these beans and you can grow those. You would germinate them just enough, soak them between 2 layers of paper towel to soak them and see that they're going to germinate, and then just plant the ones that have opened and put the little tail out. Plant them, keep them moist enough, and wait for them to grow their bean pod. Wait for the pods to go a straw yellow. They dry right on the plant. Then you can harvest your beans out of the pods. So you can grow them with an organic method instead of buying a bag of organically grown beans. It might cost you $7 or $8. But if you're using organic methods, then you're going to have organic product at the end, and it's not certified maybe, but you know what's gone on that plant, and it's a little more work, but that's where your trade-off is between the $4 bag of beans and the $8 bag of beans is your physical labor. But if you like gardening, it's a labor of love. You're out there enjoying it anyways. And because you don't have to harvest them until they're dried out, they just sit there all season. You might want to keep the weeds under control, but the rest of it, that's it. You don't have to do anything else with them. Now, let's go down to the countertop and can these beans. I sorted through these beans and made sure there were no stones or bits of straw and plant matter, and I rinsed them and then I soaked them overnight, 12 to 18 hours. Now I'm just going to drain them and rinse them again. Pretty cool. Some of those beans turned purple overnight. I don't know what color they were to start with, but they're purple now. You want to cover the beans with 2 or 3 inches of water. I'm going to put in extra because the beans are going to swell and soak up that water. It's okay to have extra. You can drain it off later. Just make sure there's enough room for the beans to boil. I think that's good. I have about 2 inches at the top, and I probably have 4 inches over the beans. The next part of this process is to put these on the stove and boil them for 2 minutes. So it's going to take a bit to bring them to a boil, but once they're there, boil them for 2 minutes and then shut it off and let them sit for an hour. I have lots of time to go do something else now. Why on earth would you bother to soak them and boil them if you can just put them in and do a dry bean into the jar, put water over top of it and can it from there? Dry bean canning. Because there is an enzyme in beans called phytic acid, and some people would call it an anti-nutrient. It makes digesting the beans harder. I already have enough digestive problems and food intolerances. I want to make this as easy to eat as possible, as easy on my stomach as possible. I don't want that bloating later, and I certainly don't want my husband to have the after effects of beans. So going through it this way will help reduce that. So sort your beans, rinse them, soak them overnight. And then when you're ready to use them, you boil them for 2 minutes. And then you walk away, and then you can go do something else for an hour. So I'm going to bring those to a boil, and I'll see you in a little more than an hour. I think I'm going to make a batch of gluten-free oatmeal cookies where I've reduced the sugar in the recipe, and they still turned out fantastic. Gluten-free and reduced sugar, and I can put them in the freezer, so I just take out 9 cookies if I want 9 cookies. It works great. Let me know in the comments down below if you want a video on that. Okay, that's taken about 15 minutes to come to the boil, and it did start to bubble over, so you don't want to fill this too full. It's close right now. As soon as I took the lid off, it simmered down a little bit. I am halfway through my 2-minute boil, and I'm going to let this sit for an hour. See all the foam coming off the top of that? That would be the enzymes that create the gas when you eat beans. Now, my husband would say, the gas is half of the fun of eating beans. But that's because he gets to torture me with the results. It's good to get rid of those as well because it makes them easier to digest. Alright, I'll see you in an hour. Well, it turns out my brain muddled those two sets of instructions together. You can soak them overnight and then boil them for 30 minutes, or boil them for 2 minutes and let them soak for an hour. I've done both with both recipes. The next step is to drain them and rinse them and bring them to a boil for 30 minutes. So I'll be doing that next. They've just been double soaked. My bad. Let's get them back in that big pot. There are as many methods for canning beans as there are YouTube homesteads that are doing canning beans. Except there isn't a recipe in my favorite canning cookbook. It's not there. I found a recipe in the book that came with my canner, and I found a recipe in the Amish Canning Cookbook. I'll have a link for this in the description below if you want to have a look at it. There's cold pack canning, there's hot pack canning, there's dry bean canning, there's soaked bean canning. Have a look around and see what method works best for you. I already screwed up, so I'm not expecting that to be, yeah, it's just one of those things. We all make mistakes from time to time, right? That was one. I mixed the two methods together in my ADHD brain. Okay, half an hour. I'll be back. Because my beans are hot, I'm going to heat my canner and I'm going to heat my jars. You use whatever method you like to heat your jars. I put them in a sink with the hottest water I can get. And then I grab them only when I need them. Most of my recipes, most of my canning, I don't use salt. But adding salt to beans can help them to not be mushy. So I'm going to do that today. I will use half a cup, or I will use half a teaspoon per pint of beans. I have my canner heating up on the stove behind me. This is a 2-pint jar. This is a 2-cup jar, 1 pint. So 1 cup or 2 cups should fill it. We want, that's hot. We want an inch of headspace, and that will be to this largest ring at the bottom of the rings. That's going to give me a little less than 2 cups. I will top that up. Oh, let's get some water boiling. I also have to top these up with boiling water. It actually isn't taking 2 cups. It's taking about 1.5 cups. Okay, I have a freshly boiled kettle. I am going to fill up each of these jars to that 1-inch headspace. Like I said, it's up to that lower rim. With each jar, I have to go in and make sure there are no air bubbles in there, and beans are notorious for having an air bubble stuck in the bottom. So let's make sure there are no air bubbles, and once you stir that, you almost always have to check the water level and top that up so that you can have that accurate 1 inch of headspace. That one's fine. After you've filled the jar, you run the rim with a fresh cloth and watch for nicks and watch for food particles stuck on top. If it's a greasy food, an oily food, or something that's super sugary, you're going to want to use vinegar instead of just water. And to put these lids on, you just do as tight as you can with your thumb and 2 fingers. Fingertip tight. That's it. Now I'm going to put those in my hot canner. It's not boiling yet, but it will be soon. I only got 7 jars out of that 2 pounds, but that's plenty of beans. This video is part of my entries into the March Canning Madness with Constance at Cosmopolitan Cornbread. Be sure to pop over to her channel and check out the playlist and support the other channels who are also making canning videos in March of 2024. If you're enjoying the videos that I'm making and you're not subscribed yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know when I make new videos. 85% of my viewers are not subscribed. I would love to improve those numbers. I'm using a Presto 23 quart canner here, and I'm at an elevation where I need 10 or 11 pounds of pressure. If I'm using the dial gauge, I need 11 pounds. My gauge is still working, but they suggest that you replace the gauge with a weight after a year or two, because we're in Ontario and Canada, we can't get these calibrated. In the United States, you can send it somewhere to get the university or something, University Extension Office, I think they say, to get those calibrated. We can't do that here. So I've switched over to a weight instead of the gauge. I do have a splash of vinegar in my canner because we have high calcium in our water. Alright, the timer's gone off. This has been venting for 10 minutes. I just kind of sneak in from the back and drop that on the spout. You don't want to get burnt by the steam, so you have to do it relatively quickly. Now, I'm just going to watch the dial and the weight to start rocking. That weight has only been on for 2 or 3 minutes, and we're already up to 9 pounds of pressure. I'm going to turn my dial down slowly, 2 notches at a time, until we get close to the 10 pounds. That came up to speed very quickly. You can see it's rocking, and it's rocking pretty fast. I need to turn that down because we are above, we're above our 11 pounds of pressure. I'm going to keep adjusting that dial until we get it back down to the 10 or 11 pounds point. But I'm really not using the gauge. I'm really not using the dial gauge to watch this. I'm going to let this rocking slow down. That's way too fast. I don't want to just turn that dial down really quickly. Just go from high to medium. You want to do it gradually, because if you change the temperature too quickly, you can cause siphoning, and your liquid and food will come out of the jars and make a big mess. And it could compromise the seal of your jars. So I'm going to wait for 3 minutes and turn it down a bit, wait for 5 minutes, turn it down a bit, and then play with it. Usually I can set it on a 3 out of 9, so it's low medium. I've got the dial on the stove to the setting that I need to maintain this. You can see that the weight is rocking rhythmically. My dial says between 10 and 11 pounds, and this little button here has popped up and stayed stable as well. Now I'm going to leave that on a timer for 75 minutes for pints, which is what I'm doing today, or 90 minutes for quarts. I love it. I'll be back when these are ready to come out. Okay, it's been sitting at that pressure evenly for the entire time. Now I'm just going to shut that off. My timer has gone off, and I'm going to let this cool so that the pressure comes down by itself and so that this weight stops rocking. Okay, this has been sitting for a while. There's no pressure left on the gauge, and there's no pressure left under the weight. Let's allow that to sit for 10 more minutes. Let's have a look at these cans of beans. My lids are popping just from the temperature change. They're still bubbling, and it's been a good half hour. There has been some siphoning. The water in the pot is slightly off of the clear. It's kind of cloudy, but I can really smell the beans, so that tells me that there has been some siphoning. Now sometimes when you have siphoning, the lids may not close, the seals may not be proper, so I will watch for that very carefully. There we go, 7 jars of mixed beans. They can go on my pantry shelf. I think next time I'll do more at one time, so I can do up to 18 jars at a time. If I'm going to be spending the time to do it anyways, I might as well make up 2 different bags of beans. This was 2 pounds of beans at $3.99. And I've got 7 jars of beans, which would cost me $1.99 each, so $14 out of $14 worth of products out of a bag that cost me 4. I think that is a good deal. And now I can use these beans already cooked, because using dry beans you have to stop and soak them or pre-boil them before you can use them in your recipes. These are now ready to use in my recipes immediately.